fragments turned into masterpieces. Amelia stood in the great hall of the Bolton mansion, stepmother Victoria's screams echoing through the cold space. On the dinner table, her 18-year-old birthday cake was still intact. The candles had just been blown out but had not yet had time to celebrate. "You are an ungrateful person," Victoria shouted, her sharp eyes staring directly at her. "How dare you say that you want to study art instead of business? After all we've done for you?" Amelia tried to stay calm, but her hands were still shaking. Since childhood, she has been passionate about drawing. The sketches in the room are her world, where she finds peace in the midst of the pressures Victoria puts on her family. The only person who ever encouraged her to pursue her dreams was her grandmother Eleanor. She always reminded Amelia that life is not only about numbers or profits, but also needs beauty and emotion from art. But since her death 2 years ago, Victoria has taken control of the family, turning everything into a battleground of ambition and manipulation. "Dad supports you, right?" Amelia turned to her father, Richard, hoping to find support from him. But he was just silent, his eyes evading as he continued to drink wine. The father who once proudly looked at her drawings was now just a shadow of himself, completely controlled by Victoria. Victoria came closer, a cold smile on her face. "I have 2 choices, Amelia. Either learn business and accept a role in the company, or leave this house right away." Amelia clenched her Florence Academy of Fine Arts admission letter in her hand, which she had received this morning. It was her dream, the faith that Eleanor had instilled. With a sudden determination, she tore the letter in front of Victoria, then announced, "I choose to leave." 20 minutes later, Amelia stood in front of the gates of the Bolton mansion with a small backpack. On her back was all that remained: a few clothes, a favorite sketchbook, and a wooden box from Mrs. Eleanor. Stepping out of the house, she didn't know what the future would be, but she chose to keep her dream, even though she had to face the harsh world outside. Amelia left the Bolton mansion with a heavy heart and a small backpack on her shoulders. A cold wind blew through, reminding her that the world out there was not easy. Victoria's sarcasm echoed in her head. "I won't last a week." But Amelia told herself that, no matter how difficult it was, she could not go back to the place where she had buried her dream. In the first months, Amelia faced the harshness of life. With no place to call home, she moved from one friend's sofa to another's room. As the welcome began to fade, and the questions of her parents and friends became increasingly difficult to answer, Amelia realized that she had to be independent if she wanted to survive. She found work as a barista in the morning, a waitress at noon, and a hotel receptionist in the evening. 3 jobs at the same time exhausted her, and her hands that had been used to pencils and paints were now trembling from fatigue. Dreams of art seem increasingly distant, overshadowed by worries about rent and bills piling up. One rainy night, after a long shift, Amelia sat in a tiny room above the laundromat. She opened her backpack and took out the wooden box that Mrs. Eleanor had left behind. She hesitated, remembering her words, "Only open it when you really need it." In the end, she decided that there was nothing left to lose. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid of the box. Inside was a golden key and a handwritten letter. Mrs. Eleanor's graceful words appeared. "Dear Amelia, if you were reading this letter, everything would have gone as I feared. Victoria never hid her ambitions, and I knew Richard wouldn't be able to protect me. But I am prepared for this day. This key will open the safe box number 247 at First Metropolitan Bank. Everything you need to start over is there. And remember, Amelia, the greatest works always need time to unravel. I love you, Mrs. Eleanor." The next morning, with the keys in hand and a new glimmer of hope, Amelia walked into the First Metropolitan Bank. What she is about to discover will completely change her life and give her the opportunity to reclaim everything that has been taken away. Amelia walked into the First Metropolitan Bank, clutching the golden key left by Mrs. Eleanor. Her heart pounded when she met the bank manager. His eyes lit up when he saw the key. "We've been waiting for you, Miss Bolton," he said, leading her into a secure room with safe box number 247. Amelia opened the box and found inside a stack of papers a letter from Mr. Whitmore's lawyer, along with many important documents. Whitmore's explanations stunned her. Before she died, Eleanor had transferred most of her estate, including her ownership of the mansion, a controlling stake in Bolton Industries, and a private art collection, into a trust called Amelia. This trust was designed to activate on her 20th birthday in order to protect her from Victoria and Richard's control. In addition, Ms. Eleanor also arranged a special financial plan. Another envelope contained a confirmation that all of Amelia's education, housing, and living expenses at the Florence Academy of Fine Arts had been paid through a trust. Amelia could not hold back her tears as she read Eleanor's last words in the letter. "You are always capable of overcoming all difficulties, Amelia. I just want you to have the opportunity to realize your dreams without being hindered. Remember, you will not only inherit this property, but also the strength of the whole family." Energized and confident, Amelia booked a plane ticket to Florence that night. She knew that her journey in Florence would not only be where she explored art, but also an opportunity to prepare for the day she would return to face Victoria and reclaim her heritage. Amelia arrived in Florence with a heart full of mixed emotions: freedom, hope, but also no less worry. The Florence Academy of Arts, where Eleanor had always encouraged her to pursue, was a whole new world. She started her first day with classes in classical painting and techniques, as well as visits to the city's famous art museums. Immersed in an inspiring art space, Amelia rediscovers the dream that was once extinguished by Victoria. In addition to practicing her skills, Amelia also participates in financial management sessions that Eleanor has prepared through trust fund manager, Mr. Whitmore. He taught her how to analyze financial statements, run the company, and strategy for the growth of Bolton Industries. This knowledge not only helped her gain more confidence, but also prepared her for the day she faced Victoria and Richard. During her time in Florence, Amelia was constantly developing herself. She participated in art exhibitions, connected with other young artists, and began selling some of her work. Every day, she felt stronger, no longer the weak girl who left the Bolton mansion 2 years ago. As Amelia's 20th birthday approached, Mr. Whitmore sent an email informing, "All legal documents are ready. Prepare to return, Miss Bolton." Amelia stood on the balcony of her small apartment in Florence, overlooking the city, and knew that the time had come to give back justice. Not only is she willing to reclaim her family's fortune, but she is also willing to face Victoria and Richard to assert her position. On her 20th birthday, Amelia took a flight back to her homeland, ready to face the people who had trampled on her dreams. During the past 2 years, she has changed completely. No longer the trembling girl who was kicked out of the Bolton mansion, Amelia is now confident and mature, with a deep knowledge of the art and business management skills that Eleanor has long prepared. Mr. Whitmore picked her up at the airport, carrying an important set of legal documents. "The paperwork has been completed," he said, handing Amelia a copy of the decision to transfer assets from the trust. Victoria and Richard were notified by mail asking to leave the mansion before today. As Amelia stood in front of the gates of the Bolton mansion, the memory of the day she was evicted rushed back. But now, she no longer felt scared or helpless. Things were different. The door to the mansion swung open, and Victoria rushed out, with a stack of papers in her hand with panicked eyes. "Amelia, what is this? Impossible! Charles has inherited it all!" she shouted, her voice cold but full of worry. Amelia smiled calmly. "That's wrong, Victoria. Most of the family's assets have been transferred by Mrs. Eleanor to a trust in my name, and today, it's all officially mine." Victoria tried to argue, but Mr. Whitmore stepped forward, clearly explaining all the legal terms. Richard stepped behind Victoria, looking more tired and older than before. When he saw Amelia, a look of remorse was evident in his eyes. But Amelia didn't give him a chance to speak. "I chose to be silent when I needed you most," Amelia said, her voice cold but not lacking in restraint. "Today, I don't need your explanation or apology anymore. I've learned to protect myself." Amelia orders the legal staff and security team to come and monitor Victoria and Richard's departure from the mansion. Victoria's days of control are over, and the house, along with all the property, returns to the right heir. Amelia watched them leave, relieved. She knew that this was not only about reclaiming ownership, but also about asserting herself. After all, she not only survives, but also stands firm and wins. now she is ready to rebuild a new, stronger legacy than ever. As Victoria and Richard left the Bolton mansion, Amelia stood in the middle of the hall, where she had witnessed the moment she was sent away. But this time, she no longer felt pain or resentment. She had regained what was hers, and now it was time to start building a new legacy, one that reflected the spirit of Mrs. Eleanor. With the support of Mr. Whitmore and the new management team, Amelia quickly implemented a plan to reform Bolton Industries. She came up with bold strategies, focusing on creative and humanitarian projects, including an art fellowship program named after Eleanor. The Rose Bolton Art Gallery was born, renovated from the east wing of the mansion, becoming a showcase for artwork from young artists and talents in need of support, just as Amelia used to be. Meanwhile, Richard, after Victoria leaves him, seeks to make amends with his daughter. He participates in Amelia's business training program for students in the scholarship program. Amelia agreed to let him work under the supervision of the board, not out of camaraderie, but because she saw what he could do if placed in a healthy environment. A year later, the gallery held a grand opening, attracting attention from the art world and the media. Amelia stood in the middle of the works, clearly feeling that the legacy that Mrs. Eleanor left behind was not only a material asset, but also a strength, will, and love for art. She looks back on her journey. From a young girl who was trampled, she has now become the master of both her future and her past. Amelia understands that success comes not only from reclaiming what belongs to her, but also from building a new path to inspire others. A year after regaining control of the Bolton Mansion and Bolton Industries, Amelia stands in the Rose Bolton Art Gallery, where light from soaring windows shines on the exhibits. The opening was an unexpected success. The paintings of young artists in the Art Scholarship Program, named after Mr. Eleanor, have attracted the attention of professionals. The dream that Mrs. Eleanor had encouraged Amelia to pursue was now a reality, not only for herself, but for many others. Amelia not only rebuilds the legacy, but also brings a new vision to Bolton Industries. Under her leadership, the company combines business and the arts, investing in creative projects and community programs. These changes not only help increase revenue, but also create sustainable value for society. In the bustling atmosphere of the exhibition, Richard walked in, looking older but calm and quiet. Amelia watched him stop in front of the portrait of Eleanor that she had painted herself, the central work of the gallery. When he returned, Amelia simply said, "Dad is still doing well in training, but I have to remember, faith can't be rebuilt in a day." Richard nodded and replied hoarsely, "I know. Thank you for giving me a chance." That night, after the guests had left, Amelia sat back in Eleanor's garden, the moonlight shining on the roses she had once loved. In her hand is a handwritten letter to the future generation of artists. "The most beautiful pieces are often created from fragments," she wrote. "And sometimes the most authentic legacies are not just what we receive, but what we leave behind." Amelia knows that her journey is not only to assert herself, but also to sow the seeds of dreams for others. Amelia sat in Mrs. Eleanor's garden, where the sweet fragrance of roses enveloped the quiet space. Eleanor once told her, "Heritage is not just what we inherit, but what we leave behind." Those words sounded in her mind as Amelia looked at the Bolton Mansion, which now took on a completely different appearance. The Rose Bolton Art Gallery is not only a place to display works of art, but also a symbol of hope and opportunity. Young students from the scholarship program have started to reap success, with some of the works being auctioned off to raise funds for further projects. Amelia clearly felt that Eleanor was not just leaving behind a fortune, but also a vision of a future where art and business could coexist to create real value. In Amelia's hand was a letter she was writing to put in a safe, just like Eleanor had done for her. "To future artists," she wrote, "don't be afraid of difficulties. Remember that the greatest works are often made up of fragments. Use what you have to create something beautiful. And when you get the chance, help others overcome their difficulties." As the moonlight illuminated the garden, Amelia smiled. The traumatic years had become a source of strength. Not only did she rebuild Eleanor's legacy, but she also made it the foundation for the next generation. She understands that the best revenge is not destruction, but to live fully and give value to life. Heritage is truly the dreams you help others fulfill.